Alex Farquharson. I'm the director of Nottingham Contemporary, and I'm the co-curator with Leah of this exhibition, Kafou Haiti, Art and Voodoo. So the story of this exhibition begins in the mid-1940s with the foundation of an art centre called simply Centre d'Art in Port-au-Prince by an American, DeWitt Peters, together with some Haitian artists. Those original artists were middle class and educated. The Centre d'Art attracted an amazing generation of artists from the urban and rural poor majority who were either working in relative isolation or without recognition prior to that, or through the example of Centre d'Art were inspired to take up art themselves. The first, and he remains the most celebrated, was Hector Hippolyte, who's behind me. And Hector Hippolyte was probably around 50 when the people from Centre d'Art found him in about 1945, just a year after his founding, and developed contact with him. They found these amazing, beautiful floral paintings on rural shacks and a bar in particular. As a form of income, he was decorating homes with motifs and painting the Loire. The Loire are spirits in Haitian voodoo. And it was thought that Hector Hippolyte was a Ungon, a voodoo priest. This has been disputed since, but he was clearly someone whose art was divinely inspired as he would see it, and many of his paintings are paintings of the Loire, and in this case, Papa Zaka and Papa Ogu. We recognize Ogu because he's wearing red. Ogu is the spirit synonymous with the warrior, the soldier, the blacksmith, and through that, the politician and the revolutionary, because Haiti's historical importance is the fact that it's the only nation to be born of a successful slave revolt, defeated Napoleon to become Haiti. The generals, symbolized by Ogu, the generals that fought and won the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines. Dessalines joins the Ogu family of spirits, is aligned here with the spirit of the poor farmer, who until a few decades ago was the majority class in Haiti. So this is an example of a painting by Hippolyte that is, if you like, a devotional painting to the voodoo gods, and at the same time something of a history painting because of what the voodoo gods symbolize with respect to Haitian history and Haitian society. And this is a very important broader theme in the exhibition, that we're treating voodoo as something that is absolutely imbues everyday Haitian life, is believed in by the majority of Haitian people, and has had always a mythological and even real relationship with Haitian history. So the Haitian Revolution began with a voodoo ceremony at Bois Cayman, and the gods came to Haitian's side in the sense of giving them a sense of invincibility against all odds, against the most powerful armies in the world. So you could say that Haitian voodoo helped win the revolution and avenge slavery. Hector Hippolyte was championed by Breton, who was the head of the Surrealist movement. He was really the Surrealist organizer. Breton was on his way to New York and stopped by in the Caribbean on the way with the Cuban painter, important modern painter, Wifredo. And they both bought Hippolyte paintings, and Breton organized a solo exhibition of Hippolyte that traveled Europe and was a great success, and wrote it. The Surrealists were, fascinated by this work, and in particular, the popular art of Haiti that represents Surrealism. And this is the focus of the exhibition. Haitian popular art doesn't just describe voodoo. It maybe accounts for a third or a half of that art. Is often at its most imaginative or extraordinary when voodoo is being depicted. And the spirits are really voodoo believers have a relationship with. Like superheroes, like Greek gods, like ancient Egyptian gods, like Hindu gods. The gods are multiple, and they represent different facets of human character, of professions, of social life. And they're essentially kind of powered up versions of human individuals. The relationship between mortals and immortals is not absolutely distinct in Haitian voodoo. The gods, the spirits, are called invisibles, but they take human form during voodoo ceremonies when they possess an individual devotee at the ceremony. This is called mounting the horse. So the devotee possessed becomes the horse that the god rides, and during possession, that individual, for all intents and purposes, is that god, and is treated as that god, incarnated by the other devotees. Most voodoo temples are dedicated to one specific god more than others. And so the altars, the decorations tend to symbolize the attributes of that god. And it tends to be that god that possesses the individual during a service. But when they're possessed, they're dressed up with the costume and the paraphernalia of that god. So say if someone was possessed by Ogu, they would have probably a red silk scarf put over their neck. They would be given a machete, and they would curse like a general, and be given rum and the offerings that Ogu in particular would want. So Wilson Bigot was a much younger artist than Hector Hippolyte, an example of a poor artist who was inspired to become an artist through Hector Hippolyte's success and the Centre d'Art being there in Port-au-Prince. Here we see voodoo represented quite differently and in a charmingly everyday sense. So you have a picture of a beach scene here, and on the horizon you see La Sirène, an example of a powerful voodoo goddess who takes the form of a mermaid. But in the bottom right corner, you see probably someone representing the artist himself, who is kind of crouching down, has a piece of paper and a pencil, and is drawing a sketch of La Sirène, who in the title is described as the wild La Sirène. It's a painting that's very conscious of itself, representing voodoo, and maybe the challenge of representing the supernatural. The composition of this painting is very similar, actually. You get this extreme perspective going right into this far point here. And in the foreground, you see Haitians at carnival dressed as Indians. In the background, you see a very famous spirit who is perhaps the best known to Western audiences, Baron Samedi. He's the god of the dead. He's an example of a Haitian god, actually like Ogu, who came all the way from Africa through the Middle Passage when slaves were transported to Haiti. But as with all voodoo spirits, there is African voodoo as well that derive from Africa and what was the Dahomey kingdom in Western Africa. They undergo a metamorphosis in their arrival in Haiti. But the Indians are representatives of the original inhabitants of the island. Haiti is the western third of Hispaniola. The other two-thirds in the center and the right is the Dominican Republic. The Haitians are very respectful of this original population that was wiped out, and traces of their culture are in Haitian culture. The art left behind, aspects of the religion. And it's thought that the African slaves, when they were in Haiti, or Saint-Domingue as it was called under French rule, the escaped slaves living in the mountains came into contact with few remaining Indians, and aspects of Indian religion, Taino religion. Taino is the name of the Indian people in Haiti, infiltrated voodoo as it was evolving. So that's them, and they're dancing around a pond, and maybe the pond could be like a kind of highway or pipe down to the spiritual ocean that Haitians believe lie under Haiti, and the ancestors reside. And Haitians call this place, which you could think of as a kind of heaven, I suppose, a kind of immortal realm. They call it Guinan, Guinan being Haitian Creole for Guinea, and therefore Africa. So in voodoo, Africa is not the real place, the place known to geographers and history, but is more potently this spiritual place lying under an ocean, under Haiti itself. So you could say that the gods are being called up from, perhaps down this kind of big pipeline under the earth to the street, to the mortal realm. And the exhibition title kind of in a way evokes these movements. We've called it Kafou, and Kafou is the Creole word for crossroads. It comes from the French carrefour, meaning four roads. So Kafou. And the crossroads is a very important concept in Haitian voodoo and African beliefs in general. In African beliefs, it's where the mortals go to meet the immortals. And so the idea of the crossroads is that the horizon of the world, of the mortal realm, crosses the vertical realm of the spiritual world. And where they meet is this point of intensity where the spiritual world can enter the mortal world. And I suppose running throughout this exhibition, and in many ways throughout much or most of Haitian culture, is this amazing sense that the immortal world is kind of ever present in the mortal realm. It's certainly very true of the presence of the dead. That the ancestors reside around the family compound, the peasant compound, that people are buried in the family plot of land, and so the dead are ever present. There's not this absolute distinction between life and death, and death is not treated as a negative thing. So Baron Samedi is also a life force. He's not so much. He doesn't represent death as the antithesis of life, but instead he represents the kind of threshold of life and death. He's also a bawdy god. When he possesses someone, that person tells a lot of very quite sexually explicit jokes and so on, and is very suggestive with perhaps members of the opposite sex at the voodoo ceremony. So he's also represents sex, and so hence, this thing of being at the threshold of life and death. Back to Hippolyte again. Here we have a much more magical scene where the background is abstract, beautiful colors, very modern looking colors like Matisse or something. But here you see a little ceremony to Baron Samedi. So this is called General Baron. So his kind of identity is being mixed there with maybe the generals of the Haitian Revolution. We know this is a ceremony to him because it's happening in a cemetery, which is where ceremonies to the Gede family. Gedes are the family of gods that Baron Samedi is the kind of chief of, take place. So there's all this paraphernalia going on, familiar things from Haitian voodoo ritual, this spiritual rattle made out of beads, the bones of snakes, the vertebrae bones here, bells to call up the gods, and a sacrifice of a cockerel to the god, and food offerings. This is our first zombie sighting in the exhibition. The painting's called Zombies from 1946. And we see a bunch of kind of cowed figures that all look the same. They look a bit like ghosts. And we see a priest. This is a bit unusual in a church. So you would expect to see a sorcerer. And a sorcerer is considered a bad voodoo priest, someone that misuses spiritual powers. While a voodoo priest or mambo, who's the priestess, usually and is supposed to use spiritual forces for positive outcomes, but a sorcerer uses them for negative outcomes, a bit like kind of black magic. The zombie we're all familiar with, obviously, from Hollywood movies. And the first one was made in 1932, is called White Zombie. And it was made at the time of the US occupation of Haiti, which lasted from 1915 to 1934, which was a very hostile occupation, an exploitative one. During that time, you get quite a lot of popular literature and even film that negatively portrays the beliefs and customs of the Haitian people, linking voodoo in particular to, say, cannibalistic practices, and portraying Haiti as this dark, black republic somewhere primitive. Instead, this place of superstitious fears and dark practices. This is all part of the demonization of Haiti as a sovereign nation after the revolution by colonial forces, or by then neo-colonial forces. America was seeking to dominate the Caribbean in particular, and the Western Hemisphere in general. What a zombie is in Haitian folklore or Haitian voodoo, it's an individual that's been essentially put to death by a sorcerer, and then brought to life through other forms of magic. But when they're brought to life in this zombified state, as we'd recognize it, but has lost all sense of imagination, of agency, of will, of identity, and they're docile, and they're there to do someone else's bidding. They're there to do the sorcerer's bidding. If you think about it, this is very much what happened to individuals through the process of slavery. That slavery denied people their basic human rights, denied them even their identity as human. And under law, slaves were defined as things, not humans. They had their names taken away from them. They had their beliefs, their religions, everything taken away from them. The zombie is, in fact, really a metaphor, an allegory for the experience of slavery. The zombie remains a zombie until they're given salt. And if they're given salt, then they suddenly come to their senses and experience terrific rage and turn on the sorcerer, or you might say the slave master. And so if you think about it, this is exactly what happened with slave revolts, and in particular in Saint-Domingue during the revolution leading to Haitian independence. Slavery wasn't just abolished in London, in Paris and elsewhere by well-meaning abolitionists. In fact, there was revolt throughout slave-owning nations. Philoméne Aubin is a bit of an exception in the exhibition in that he wasn't a voodooist. He was, in fact, a Baptist, which is quite unusual. Most Haitians were and are Catholic as well as voodoo. His paintings were these very, very detailed scenes of the social situation in Cap Haitian, but also historical events. He's describing an episode during the American occupation. Rebels, they were called the Cacos. They were like a kind of peasant army in many ways, and they were rebelling against the American occupation that brought with it, for example, forced labor, and people lost their lands to large American-owned companies. At the same time, there are little traces of voodoo that I think give it a meaningful place in the exhibition. It may seem far-fetched, but most Haitians would see in this bridge a link to Ogu, who I talked about earlier, the warrior god. Ogu's color is red. And you can see that many of the rebels, they all wear scarves. Many of them wear red scarves. There's one even around the arm. And this would symbolize Ogu as the warrior spirit, the spirit of revolution. And by doing that, they were making a link down through history between a recent anti-colonial event, the resistance against the US occupation, and the Haitian Revolution, but also making a connection as to how this has entered Haitian mythology and how Haitian mythology and voodoo spirits come to the aid of the Haitian Revolution and the continuing struggle for Haitian autonomy. It's also very symbolic of the revolution in that Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who led the Haitians eventually to liberation in 1803 and was the first emperor from 1804. He was assassinated by rivals in 1806 at a place called Pont Rouge, so Red Bridge. So there'd be a direct link made there. And in fact, Dessalines, of all the generals, of all the heroes, and there are 3 or 4 of them that are really entered legend of the Haitian Revolution, he's the only one that's been transfigured into a voodoo god. And there is in fact an Ogu Dessalines So he's now a spirit, and there are ceremonies to Dessalines. So he's both a very real historical character, someone that defeated Napoleon's army, as well as now a spirit that there are ceremonies to. And just to our left here, we see the leader, their leader, who's called Charlemagne Perrault. Perrault, their very inspirational leader, was assassinated by the US Marines. And this had the unfortunate effect for the US occupation of turning Perrault into a martyr. It looked very like the martyrdom of a saint, further heroicized Perrault and Cacot's struggle against the US occupation. André Pierre here, he's an artist that died a few years ago, began painting around about 1950, so quite early on. And here you see another voodoo spirit, Simbi, who's a god of fresh water in the forest, in nature. But again, very much in the kind of garb of a Haitian revolutionary. You can see the clothes he's wearing don't belong to 20th century, they belong to something like 1800, the time of the revolution. And he's very fine looking. His kind of long hair and his earring and all this amazing braiding and the epaulets and his long decorative sword. You can see a little symbol at his feet, and this is called a veve. And veves are made at the beginning of voodoo ceremonies. They're made using something like corn flour, some kind of white grain-like substance. And the voodoo priest will make a drawing of the symbol on the floor by pouring this flour. And each of these symbols is particular to the god they represent. And through them, the gods are attracted down. They're almost like kind of codes to the supernatural realm by which one can kind of summon down a god. So here the god appears to have been summoned in a natural setting in a forest. Here are other members of the Gede family, the kind of gods of death, the dead. And here is Madame Brigitte, his consort. And the Gede Nibo, Baron Sambi's secretary, it says Secrétaire Baron. And at their feet, again, are their various veves. So Baron Samdi's is recognizable from being a cross with a skull on it. Seems to have a bottle of rum by it. They're all wearing black, purple and white. These are the Gede colors. And here you can see written in French, here are the spirits of the dead. You see this esprit de mort. And you can see all these graves around. So these would be kind of ancestors, and perhaps ancestors on their way to becoming the millions and millions of much lesser known spirits. And the subject of this one is a ceremony to Agwe and La Siren. We met La Siren earlier, the mermaid, and she's the consort of Agwe, who's another powerful god, but in this case, the god of the sea. He's very much, if Ogu is a general, then he's very much an admiral. And again, evoking the time of the revolution. Napoleon said, rid me of these gilded Africans and I'll have nothing else to wish for. And here you see a ceremony in action. You see a raft in the middle, and the raft is full of foodstuff and offerings, and it's going to be floated on the sea. So the animals would be sacrificed, the raft floated on the ocean, and when the raft sinks, it's believed that the voodoo gods have, or Agwe has accepted the offering. In Dufault, you get a sense, like his paintings of Jacmel, of a massive sky. And the voodoo gods are not, you don't know how big they are. In fact, they could be huge. They look like they're towering presences. They're also a little bit architectural, which kind of calls to mind these magical urban landscapes. So here you see a god called Papa Marionnette de Laval, and he's presented quite abstractly. You see his arms are all geometric, and they're kind of bathed in fire or bathed in blood, and emerging from the sacred drum. And he's covered in horns which are really kind of bull's horns, really. The bull is also a voodoo spirit, Bosu, Horns are points of energy in Haitian voodoo. So a voodoo cross will have little curlicues with points on the end, bull's horns, points of spiritual energy. Again, you see attributes of voodoo ceremonies, the bell, the sacred rattle. McCandle was a historical figure before the revolution. He was recognizable because he'd lost an arm in the sugarcane machinery. Sugar was the main industry of Haiti, of Saint-Domingue, and Saint-Domingue produced over half of Europe's sugar. It was the most profitable colony in the world under the French. Most voodoo Loire belong to two main nations, as they're called, nations of spirits, and one is called Rada, and the Rada spirits can be tracked back to African sources. So the Gede, Ogu, and others belong to them. They tend to be more familiar, and they tend to be more benevolent. And the other big nation of spirits is called Petuo, and they're much harsher. They're tempestuous. They're angry, and these gods came into being in Saint-Domingue during slavery. So they're spirits of the New World, of the Americas, and they're revolutionary spirits and very associated with the revolution. Kafou, the spirit after which the title is named, is the spirit of the crossroads. A spirit has an equivalent in the other big nation of gods. So his equivalent is Legba in the Rada family, who's better known and a very important god in Africa. In Africa, he's a young man, he's very virile, but in Haitian voodoo, he's an old man, as if he's born the pain and experience of Haitian history across the Atlantic world and through slavery. But here is his kind of younger sibling or cousin in the Petuo family. So Legba opens the gate for the other spirits. Kafou is the guardian of the crossroads. And if you're not careful, he can let diabolic spirits through.